Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and I'm joined today by my brother, the Gritty Broman. How are you, Brent?
I'm well. Thank you.
Right on. So today we're going to resume our series that we started with the River of Doubt, Theodore Roosevelt going on a harrowing expedition down the Amazon River. It's a wild and crazy story where after Theodore Roosevelt was no longer president of the United States, a little bit older in age, he decides to go on a death-defying expedition that others attempt to do in following years and are never heard or seen from again. They encounter native people that are very dangerous. They go through the river. And so far in this series, we've brought you along, and now it's getting to the point where Theodore is... And the expedition is getting ready to get into the Amazon River and they're floating down. And we kind of set the stage for you, what it was like just to get to this point, how dangerous it's been, how many people have...
We painted a terrifying picture, and it's just going to get worse from here on out.
Completely. And for those that have been following and enjoying these kind of book reviews and discussions, we got more coming up. We really enjoy doing these. I think it provides great education. It gets people interested in books. And many of you wrote in and said that you went and got the book or got the audiobook and listened to it. And I think that's great. It's still fun to listen to other people. It's sort of like a book club in a way. So we're going to resume that with a few podcasts. We're going to finish out this book. We got another book that I'm really excited to get into that I've been working on reading is 3 Felonies a Day, How the Feds Target the Innocent. I got this from Jack Carr, ex-Navy SEAL and author of the New York Times best-selling author of Savage Son. His new book is The Devil's Hand. You should go get it. You should also leave him a nice review on Amazon. But he's doing such an awesome job. He's on the podcast lately, and we got into the film permits and the federal government and overreach and laws and the unconstitutionality of filming on public lands and so on. This is a creepy book that I think is going to be enlightening to all. So I'm excited to get to that. But today we're gonna go on the adventures with Theodore Roosevelt, and we're gonna talk about basically the Amazon River and what is there, the dangers, and it's gonna get even scarier. I would never.
Brian, before we started, said, "Hey, Brent, look up these 3 animals," and it has just reconfirmed. No.
Yeah. There is no need to ever get in the Amazon.
It's so bad, I don't want to go to South America.
It's funny because I see people in Australia getting in rivers with 20-foot crocodiles and things, and I'm like, what are you doing? Or you see people swimming in oceans and off the coast of Africa with poisonous, snakes in the ocean, and then like sharks and so on. You get into South America, and it's all the creepy bugs and poisonous and snakes, and you come up here to like the mid-U.S., or the United States, and you're like, it's a pretty, we don't have lions out there hunting us. Like True. Africa. I mean, you can go to some countries where I'm like, this is an inhospitable place for human beings.
Really, we got bears.
Yeah, grizzlies.
Only in certain parts.
Yeah. And I don't think we're desensitized to the dangers that are out there, or we take it for granted, although because we just grow up with it and we're like, oh, it's not that scary. No, I just think it's not that dangerous when you compare it to other countries.
There's no scrub bulls. There's no water buffalo. There's no giant marsupials trying to box me. There's less poisonous things.
Yeah, it's different.
No thanks.
So, South America.
Though, we do have Florida, and there's some stuff going on in Florida.
True.
We're going to talk about that in a minute.
And the South in general, right?
Here's the problem with Florida. I'm going to save it. I have a theory about Florida.
Before we get started, I want to tell you guys about the Backcountry Fuel Box with our buddy, Cody Rich. I just got this one today, so it's perfect.
Ooh, what's in it?
I'll show you.
Are we having an unboxing?
Because I think this is interesting.
Are we having an unboxing?
For y'all, you sign up with the code GRITTY. You get this box in the mail. This is what it looks like for those who can view this.
You get a shoebox.
Yeah. And here we have basically a few items in here, and here's the card I was talking about before.
The discount card?
Yeah, where there's the featured products that are in here. And what you get, and that when you use these codes, you can get 20% off your purchase. These keto bars.
That's some nice card stuff.
Backpackers Pantry. damn good jerky, 25% off using the code. And so you get these deals when you are part of this. And
is their jerky better than your jerky?
so I haven't tested it yet, but there's this damn good jerky right here, Western style. Also, I got in the box this organic chocolate peanut butter blend, which looks pretty stellar. I mean, the stuff's really high quality. I dove into this, which is Pro Bar Electrolytes, B Vitamins, Bolt Organic Energy Chews, Pink Lemonade. They're tasty and
Power gummies. Like they could have condensed that statement a lot.
And they're good. Like they're tasty. So, for those that like coffee, there's a coffee blend in here packet. There's a Pro Bar Meal on the Go peanut butter chocolate chip, which looks delicious. And again, I like the ingredients of this stuff. So I ate this keto bar, which I've never heard of before, which is what I like about this box. In fact, I've never heard of the Bolt Chews either.
I have not seen any of those things.
This is a vegan, gluten-free, no sugar added, blah, 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 keto bar, ketos.com, chocolate peanut butter bar, delicious.
Yeah.
Delicious. So that's awesome. And then now there's also in here a dark chocolate coconut almond version. So for all of you guys that are into backpacking and getting out in the backcountry, like there's nothing in here that I don't like or I'm not happy I got, right? And I could, if I were to buy this at the store just the way it is, I'd pay way more than if I get the box. And then here is a Summit Breakfast Scramble by Backpacker's Pantry. There's usually a breakfast and a dinner sometimes, or one or the other in each box. That's kind of the deal. And so you eat all of this and you find something in here that you're like, oh, I really like those. You can order up what you want with your big discount, and it's a win. And then next month you get another stack of stuff you may or may not have ever heard before. And it's pretty cool because a lot of the stuff I didn't even know in the box before. I didn't know what those things were. And you get to taste test and figure things out. Plus, each time you get this box, it's at least a day's worth of food, if not more. By the time you're a few months into this process, 6 months you've been getting the box, you've got enough food for more than 6 days of hunting. But they never last that long. I'm always eating it throughout the week, snacking here and there. So check that out. Check out Mountain Ops. This is the Mountain Ops Ignite. This powdered drink is legit. It's got some caffeine, little nitrous oxide, citrus bliss. I like the pink lemonade, citrus bliss. They got lots of flavors.
Bro, they always have flavors coming out.
And so use the code GRITTY and you save on that. Check that out. And great backcountry foods right there. Okay, let's get to the book here. This is chapter 13. We're going to talk about the river, On the Ink Black River. And it goes like this. Brace yourself, Brent. It's going to get creepy. From the moment they launched their boats upon the River of Doubt, Roosevelt and his men knew that the river would be their only guide, which we talked about. Once they go down this river, there's no turning back. You don't get to go back. This jungle is impenetrable. So you're kind of like, okay, here we go. And you don't know, they have no idea what the river's going to be like, which turns out to be a nightmare later, but that's a little foreshadowing. Plus, they've run into some Aborigine type folks already, and they've
got good reasons for turning back.
Scary. Even when they were on land, hunting, portaging, or making camp for the night, they would never stray from its shores. They needed it for drinking water, cooking, and bathing. They needed it to escape from the oppressive heat of the rainforest, which clung to them like a wet wool blanket. Most of all, they needed it to carry them home. As important as the river was to the expedition, however, it was a capricious and unreliable ally. Like many South American rivers, the River of Doubt could change character quickly and dramatically over a very short distance, and with profound consequences for an expedition. Swollen and swift during the rainy season, it was cluttered with dangerous debris and pocked with shifting whirlpools that could flip a canoe and trap a man under the surface of the water in a matter of seconds. Even more complex and dangerous than the river itself were the fishes, mammals, and reptiles that inhabited it. Like the rainforest that surrounds and depends on it, the Amazon River is a prodigy of speciation and diversity, serving as home to more than 3,000 species of freshwater fishes, more than any other river system on Earth. Its waters are crowded with creatures of nearly every size, shape, and evolutionary adaptation, from tiny neon tetras to 1,000-pound manatees, to pink freshwater boto dolphins, to stingrays, to armor-plated catfishes, to bull sharks. By comparison, the entire Missouri and Mississippi River system that drains much of North America has only about 375 fish species.
Jeez.
How many did they say was in the Amazon?
1,300.
1,300.
So
compared to 375.
So I was reading on Wikipedia that there's there's 1,300 species of just catfish in the Amazon River.
Wow.
So I don't know.
Okay.
There's a lot of fish down there. In fresh water. This isn't the ocean. This is a freshwater river.
Yeah. What's a Boto dolphin?
Boto? Could you spell that for me?
Boto.
I believe that's a freshwater dolphin.
Well, duh.
Yeah.
Freshwater dolphin. Mm-hmm. And then they got stingrays.
Sometimes they're called the pink river dolphin.
How big are they? I mean, they big? They have armor-plated catfishes. And that was my question to you, bull sharks. How they say they swim freely up the river, during the rainy season in the jungle. How far up do they go?
So, just to backtrack, the pink dolphins, they're between 7 to 8.5 feet, depending on male or female, long.
Wow,
they're
that's
not
like little. An ocean critter.
Yes, like it's don't know how they make it, but they don't look like your typical dolphin. They have really long snouts, and they're legit like pink with a little bit of gray on their back. Mm-hmm. They're a toothed whale, is what they're considered. Though people call them a dolphin, they're actually a really small whale, is what they are.
In fresh water.
In fresh water, yes. So the bull shark. So I had to go do this because it was in kilometers, but it was 4,000. They've been found up to 4,000 kilometers away from the ocean. Yes, and that's 2,485 miles. Just a couple states in.
So, how big do they get, and are they dangerous?
Yeah, bull sharks are dangerous. They mess stuff up.
I've heard they're among the most aggressive.
They're not happy
sharks.
critters. I think there's some. I generally think they get that salt out of their system and they go through withdrawals and they go crazy.
Are you making stuff up?
Yes, I would 100%. That's a theory.
This is not,
but it's a good theory.
Okay.
They attack humans more than any other shark out there. To put it in perspective.
Yeah, right. That's kind of what I thought. What I had remembered.
But the armored catfish. Okay, so let's talk about catfish for a second. So there's a bunch of different catfishes down there, right? Tons and tons. Maybe not 1,300. I don't know about this website or the books, right?
Right.
But there's a lot of catfishes. Okay, they have the red catfish is what they call it, which is like super common. If you want to go fish down there, you can catch like a dozen of those a day. 100-pound fish. Anytime that you want, you can go down there, you can catch them.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's like a slam dunk. You can go on YouTube and you can watch video pulling these things out left and right, like 20 a day, no problem. 100-pound fish all over in that river. Then they have
Brent might be exaggerating, so
I watched a couple videos. The paraba or piraba, I don't know, but it's a 600-pound catfish. They get up to 8 feet long, and there's videos and pictures of people holding these things. They're still in the water because they can't take the fish home.
Kind of like a giant sturgeon or something, just huge.
It's insane. But that armored catfish is also scary looking. It basically looks like, imagine a koi with armor plating. That's what you're looking at. And they are messing up Florida.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, like, Florida has a massive invasive species problem on them to the point where there's a couple counties that are already issuing bounties on them.
Yeah.
So if you bring in a tail or a fin or something like that, $20, $30 a piece.
Yeah.
And they Florida is a weird place.
Yeah.
Because I feel like
any place that evolved that gets an invasive species in
to
there
properly evolve. I feel like it's that weird mix between land and water still. Like you still have things crawling out of the ocean down there.
Right. All right. So continuing to the book, it says, able to swim freely through large swaths of the jungle during the rainy season, for example, certain Amazonian fish, such as the tambaqui, have evolved teeth that look like sheep molars and are tough enough to crack open even the hard, cannonball-sized shell of the Brazil nut. The ancient eel-like South American lungfish has lungs as well as gills. Unless it surfaces every 4 to 10 minutes for a gulp of air, it will drown. During the dry season, however, while other fishes around it die as the ponds and streams dry up, the lungfish survives by burrowing into the mud and taking oxygen from the air. Still, Another species, the so-called fluoride fish, has eyes that are divided in two at the waterline with a band of tissue. With two separate sets of corneas and retinas, the fish can search for predators in the sky above and at the same time look for danger in the water below. These are freakish.
Do they have pictures in your book? Because the pictures I'm pulling up are terrifying. Imagine someone came up and karate chopped your eyeball in half. You see them in the water, and they're taking pictures of these things.
Yeah.
And it looks like the eyeball is reflecting off the water, but then they take a picture of it partly in the water. You can see it looks like a full eyeball on the top and full eyeball at the bottom. But no, it's like it's been karate chopped in half.
Many of these strange adaptations are geared towards self-defense. Others are designed to help the fish become better, faster, smarter predators. There are electric fishes that eat nothing but the tails of other electric fish, which can regenerate their appendages, thus ensuring the predator a limitless food supply.
This sounds like a terrible sci-fi alien planet.
It's like eating grass, and then the grass regrows. It's just a body part, too.
No, eventually you're going to run out of tail.
All right. Other fish have evolved to eat prey that live outside of their own immediate ecosystem. The 3-foot-long arowana, which I've seen those, for example,
weren't those on a Meat Eater episode?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Has a huge mouth and a bony tongue and can leap twice its body length. Nicknamed the water monkey, it snatches large insects, reptiles, and even small birds from the low branches of overhanging trees. It's just a frightening place. The riverine creatures that the members of the expedition were most interested in, however, were those that were dangerous to man. The most visible threats were the 15-foot-long black caimans, which lay low near their nests of rotting debris and vanished into the water as the expedition's canoes passed by. Cherry, in particular, had great respect for the Southern American alligator. He had nearly lost his life to one while on an expedition on the Orinoco. The river had been low and the mud flat that bordered it studded with flat, exposed stones. He was stepping from stone to stone, his mind and eyes on the birds that lined the river, when he suddenly felt an impulse to look down. In mid-stride, with his foot still dangling in the air, he realized that he was just about to step not on a stone, but on the back of a large caiman. Had I done so, he later wrote, the creature would have instantly whirled about and had me in his jaws before I could possibly have escaped.
I'm looking at pictures of animals in the Amazon, and it's just like, hell no.
The river's other inhabitants were largely invisible from the expedition's dugouts, but the fact that they could not be seen only heightened the oppressive sense of danger they instilled in the men. Aboard their crude, heavily loaded boats, they sat at most just 6 inches above the water and courted danger whenever one of them dangled his foot overboard or trailed his fingers in the current. If one of their boats tipped over in a whirlpool or rapid, the men would find themselves dumped into the middle of the river with no option but a frightening swim to shore.
Okay, you got seconds.
Launching and landing the boats, often chest deep in water amid the heavy underbrush that lined the riverbank.
If you're lucky.
The men were constantly vulnerable to the predatory fish, waterborne snakes, and other creatures they were disturbing.
It's not like they had banks. It's not like they had like a bank to swim for.
You're right.
Sometimes you're swimming towards a cliff.
Yeah.
Hoping to find something to pull your butt out.
It was a little swift.
No, thank you.
Even the mundane necessity of bathing was a source of ongoing concern. Although in the mud and sweltering jungle heat, the men grew willing to take their chances. Roosevelt himself cooled off in the river at every opportunity. Floating in the shallow water near the bank, the 220-pound former president looked to Rondon like some sort of great fish, fat fish, which had come to the surface, defying the dangers that surrounded him. The fish that inspired the greatest fear among the men was the piranha. Attracted by blood and drawn to the kind of commotion that a bathing man might make, piranha have been known to swim in groups of more than 100. That's scary. Spreading out to scout for prey and then alerting the others, probably by sound when they find prey. Of the approximate 20 piranha species, most prefer to attack something their own size or smaller, and they're happy to scavenge, especially during the rainy season, when food is more plentiful. However, their muscular jaws and saw-like teeth, which look as if they have been filed to tiny spear points, they're freakish, can make quick work of a living creature of any size and strength, from a water bird to a monkey to even an ox. During telegraph line expeditions, Rondon and his soldiers regularly offered up their weakest ox to a school of piranha so that the rest of their herd could safely cross a river.
Well, that's nice. Hey, you get to walking.
It filled the belly of all the fish so that then they won't eat any more of your... Yeah. Wow. Even Rondon, who had faced down mutinous soldiers and ridden on horseback into hostile Indian territory, showed extreme caution when bathing in the river. Having seen his co-commander barefoot, Roosevelt could easily guess at the reason. One morning during a telegraph line expedition, Rondon had found a shallow pool to bathe in at the edge of a river. He had carefully inspected it first, but the moment he slipped a foot into the river, a piranha had attacked, clipping off one of his toes with a single bite. Whole toe
so
gone.
Mad.
More painful to Rondon was the loss of a friend to piranhas in 1904. While crossing a river in...
Hold up. His buddy got eaten and then he lost a toe later?
He lost... I don't know the sequence.
What was the sequence of events? Because that's important.
Why, Brent?
Because you should have learned a lesson and been like, you know what? A shower can wait. It can wait. Or better yet, let's pull a pot of water. We go sponge bath this thing up.
This is in 1904. While crossing a river on a wounded mule, the man who, like Rondon, had been atop... While crossing a river on a wounded mule, the man who, like Rondon, had been a top cadet at the military academy, was attacked by piranhas drawn to the mule's blood. By the time his companions found him, there was nothing left on the skeleton but the feet in his boots. Wow.
Okay, if he didn't learn his lesson from that could not have been that good of a friend.
Well, what's kind of interesting about that is, they're in the rivers a lot, and a lot of times, nothing happens. And I've heard people say, piranhas aren't really like they are in the movies. It's not really like that. The movies embellished it a bit, and the movies have. But all it takes is the right school at the right time, and all they have left of him is the flesh inside of his boots.
It depends on the season. What if those fish are hungry?
Well, it depends on the number and the mob, I suppose, and the school. But
has food been plentiful?
That's horrifying. That's horrifying.
And what happens if they get a taste for man flesh?
By the time his companions found him, there was nothing left on his skeleton but the feet in his boots.
Do you think they gave his boots to somebody?
I mean, they ate him to the bone. You would think at that point Rondon would be like, yeah, I ain't getting in the water.
That's what I'm getting at. That losing of the toe?
I don't know when that losing of the toe occurred, but it goes to show how people adapt and get used to dangers and are like, well, I'm going to roll the dice.
Or there's the other side of the aisle. It's like, I'm going to move.
Well, yeah. He said Roosevelt referred to a piranha as the fish that eats men when it can get the chance. By the time he had reached the River of Doubt, he had heard dozens of horrifying stories of piranhas that had left nothing but white bones on a riverbed after seizing upon a wounded soldier or an unfortunate child. Astounded by their bloodlust, he called the fish ferocious little monsters, and his vivid retelling of catching them on the Paraguay River caused a sensation in the United States when his Scribner's articles began to hit the newsstands. The piranha's rabid, furious snaps drive the teeth through flesh and bone, he wrote. The head, with its short muzzle, staring malignant eyes, and gaping, cruelly armed jaws, is the embodiment of evil ferocity. And the actions of the fish exactly match its looks. Piranhas look
evil.
They're ugly.
For real.
Even like a red belly, they don't really have color that's attractive, a shape.
No, they're red on the bottom for anger, and they're blue on the top for, camouflage.
They're not even blue. They're just like a dirty fish-looking silver.
They look like something Satan was like, hey, God.
But their teeth are just like, and their jaws are like prehistoric. They look like a
bad
dinosaur
movie.
fish. He says, I never witnessed an expedition of such impotent, savage fury as was shown by the piranhas as they flapped on deck. When fresh from the water and thrown on the boards, they uttered an extraordinary squealing sound. as they flapped about,
scream.
as they flapped about, they bit with vicious eagerness at whatever presented itself. One of them flapped into a cloth and seized it with a bulldog grip. Another grasped one of its fellows. Another snapped at a piece of wood and left the teat marks deep therein.
There's just part of me that feels like I could just squish one of those up with my boot.
Piranha had already left their teeth marks on several members of Roosevelt's own expedition. They'd bitten off part of one of Leo Miller's hands while he and Cherry were collecting in the Gran Chaco during Roosevelt's speaking tour. Suddenly, I heard an outburst of considerable profanity, Cherry later recalled, and he, Miller, came running to show me his hand, from which a good-sized piece had been torn by a piranha, the most bloodthirsty inhabitant of tropical waters. Cherry himself had been nearly devoured alive on another expedition when he had fallen from a tree branch and landed in the middle of a piranha feeding frenzy. A frenzy that he had incited by tossing into the river pieces of another piranha that he had caught earlier in that day.
I was like, what are you doing hanging over above on the branch, bro?
Even years after the incident, Cherry shuddered at the memory of that extraordinarily close call. He said, "As I fell, I made a wild grab at the limb, and in doing so, I struck my arm against a small projection, tearing a long gash in the flesh. Even in the fraction of a second it took me to fall, I realized that I was bleeding and that my blood would instantly incite an attack by the murderous fish. To be sure, the bank was only a few yards distant, but the lightning-like rapidity of the piranha left me little chance to escape unhurt. My whole instinct was to strike out instantly for the shore. Even a poor swimmer would have made it in a dozen strokes. But I retained enough of my reason to know that my one chance of escape lay in keeping the fish at bay before they became crazed with the taste of blood. So not only did I strike out for the shore, but I set up a violent motion of twisting and splashing with my arms and legs. Even then I felt a blow and a sharp pain on my shoulder that told me that one of the fish had struck. All I could do was to continue my furious splashing. Luckily, I succeeded in reaching the shore, though badly bitten, before I dragged myself out of the water. The physical effort of my contortions had exhausted me. It was some time before I could get up enough strength enough to start back to camp. I still bear the scars of that encounter, and I know that had I been even slightly stunned by my fall, I should never have lived to tell the tale. All right. As terrifying as the piranha were, many of those who lived in the settled areas of the Amazon would have preferred them to the tiny, almost transparent catfish known as the Candiru.
Candiru?
We mentioned this one before. The Candiru. The sharp-spined fish is the only other animal besides the vampire bat that is known to survive solely on blood. Most species of Candiru are only about an inch long, and they usually make their living by swimming into the gill chambers of larger fish. To other fish, the Candiru is extremely harmless because when full to capacity, it simply swims back out of the gill chamber and burrows into a riverbed to digest its blood meal. To humans, however, the miniature catfish is a potentially lethal menace. This is horrifying. When it comes to parasitizing people, a very rare occurrence, the Candiru's modus operandi is to enter through an orifice from a vagina to an anus. It is most famous, however, for wiggling its way into a urethra. The most widely discussed, if highly controversial, the theory is that Candirus are attracted to urine streams, mistaking them for the gill streams of fish. Before the unsuspecting bather knows what is happening, the Candiru has followed the stream to its source, slipped inside, sunk its spines into the soft tissue, and begun to gorge on its host's blood. For the Candiru, this is a fatal move. While it can easily swim out of fish's gills, it cannot find its way out of a human's urethra. Even if it could swim backwards, its stiff spines prevent it from going in any direction but forward. For the person from whom the Candiru has parasitized, the situation is potentially just as dire, and the cure can be as bad as the affliction. The Candiru soon dies where it is, but its blood continues to block the urethra, causing excruciating pain and, if not removed, death. Candiru Candiru removal, however, is difficult, especially in the remote tropics. In 1897, George Bolgner, a Belgian ichthyologist, I don't know what that is, and herpetologist, some kind of scientist, presented a Candiru to the Zoological Society of London and related a gruesome story told to him by a doctor named Bach of the extreme measures to which men in outlying villages were willing to go in order to rid themselves of Candiru. The only means of preventing it from reaching the bladder, where it causes inflammation and ultimately death, is to instantly amputate the penis. Bollinger told his no doubt horrified audience. Dr. Bach had actually examined a man and 3 boys with the amputated penis as a result of the dreadful incident. Dr. Bach was later discredited because he had not personally witnessed either the attacks or the amputations, but his was not the first or the last story of a penectomy, amputation, performed on a man whose urethra had been blocked by Candiru. The potential danger for the men on the River of Doubt came not just when they swam in the river, but even when they urinated in its shallow waters. Instances of Candiru's parasitizing people are rare, but in the one case in which a doctor fully documented his removal of a Candiru from a young man, the victim's explanation of how the fish had entered his urethra was nearly as shocking as the fact that it was there at all. Up to that point, most scientists had assumed that in order for the fish to find its way into a urethra, that part of the victim's anatomy had to be submerged in the water. In this case, however, the victim reported that just before the attack, he had been standing in a river urinating, but the water had reached only to his upper thighs, and his penis had not even touched the river, much less submerged in it. The Candiru, he claimed, had abruptly leapt out of the water, shimmied up his urine stream, and disappeared into his urethra. He had made a desperate lunge for the fish, but it was too fast and too slippery.
Why do you have to pee in the river? You can pee anywhere, dang it.
The incident occurred in a small town more than 100 miles from Manaus, and the local doctors had been at a loss to help the man. By the time he was finally moved to Manaus for treatment, he had been unable to urinate for more than a week, and his stomach had become so distended that he looked 6 months pregnant. The doctor who eventually operated on him was able to successfully remove the Candiru without resorting to amputation.
They just cut that in half.
They had to leave a mark. And we talked about this on an earlier podcast when we were talking about this book, and you had done some Googling and on that. I mean, we covered it in the series. It's been a while. Mm-hmm. And you went into a little more research on, the latest on this. I can't remember now all that you covered, but
it ain't good. There's still ain't no cure.
No, the way that they have to surgically remove it and all that is just horrifying.
Well, they have to splay the penis open.
Yeah, like a hot dog cut in half.
Yeah.
So, it makes my stomach turn.
Yeah, like I kind of just need to go for a walk, get some fresh air.
I can't help but like reflex and
it's like when you see that guy get like full on like soccer goal kicked into the nards.
Yeah.
And you're just like,
All right, back to the book. On the morning of March 1st, the expedition's third day on the River of Doubt, the survey canoes once again got an early start, and the rest of the expedition followed around 11 a.m. The rain began almost as soon as they shoved off the bank.
No way in hell would I be a survey canoe. It's a scout. Sacrificial scout canoe.
What's crazy about all this, like I said before, the jungle is alive. We covered that in the other show.
Literally alive.
Literally alive and often secretive. Like you don't see, it seems like what's fascinating about the jungle is it's just covered in life, like everywhere you are. However, it seems void of life because everything it's so competitive of an environment that if you're seen, you're eaten.
Or heard.
So it's just this silent, careful place where it's on the edge of that cycle of resource. So there's so little to eat except what's alive because everything is alive. And so something immediately has to die to feed the next thing. So it's just a competitive environment. And then you add the river on top of it, and the river is the same. It's just a deadly place. Everything trying to eat everything, competing. The unique adaptations, like to have a split eyeball that sees down and one that sees up. Like, that's a crazy evolutionary thing to develop that deal. And now
I feel like if you had to pick your evolutionary traits, that's a bad one to pick.
I mean, and some of it's so niche, right? Because, for example, if you're that one fish that relies on eating the fin of that other fish and it regrowing, then that's your
That's a good enough reason to evolve out of the water. This a-hole keeps eating my butt.
So it's pretty wild. Anyway, back to the book. Carried relentlessly forward by the swift current, the boats had just started to round a bend when the forested bank on both sides abruptly began to change. Most out of the mist and rain, a collection of clearly man-made structures materialized before them, and the men suddenly realized that they were being propelled without warning or preparation into the middle of an Indian village. With no opportunity to retreat and dangerously exposed, they braced themselves in their low-riding dugouts. They barely got down the river, and they've hit their first indigenous people. That's got to be unnerving, too, because you have no idea. These people have never seen Europeans, and you've never seen these native folks. I mean, they've already gone a long way to get to this point.
There are still undiscovered native people to this day.
Yeah, in the Amazon.
They take pictures of them from planes. They look nuts.
As they moved swiftly toward the village, however, they could see that it showed no signs of activity. Perched on both banks of the river, the village appeared to be devoid of life. Its population had vanished, and the jungle had already begun to reclaim the land. The palm-thatched roofs on the huts were rotting, and what appeared to have been small cultivated areas were overgrown, studded, Roosevelt wrote, with the burned skeletons of trees. At the river's edge, a fish trap bobbed in the current, little left beyond a few hewn sticks to distinguish it from the mass of vegetation growing on the banks. Around another bend in the river lay the remains of a bridge that dangled a couple feet above the water, just a few stout poles that had been driven into the riverbed, and a long rope of liana that had been twisted for strength and stretched from one bank to the other to form a handrail. The rest of the bridge was gone, swept away by the swollen river. So they get there to this river, and they check it out. Rondon speculated that these Indians were a subgroup of the Nambiquara called the Navate. Rondon nominally had a treaty with the Nambiquara, but there was no reason to believe this group would honor that treaty, or even that they knew anything about it or Rondon. The only certainty was that if they were still alive, the Indians who once lived in this village would see the expedition before the members of the expedition would see them. There was nothing to explain why the Indians had deserted their village. Perhaps they had moved into the interior, or as the river began to rise, had found better land for planting. They'd gone elsewhere to establish homes, but they also could have been massacred by another tribe, or even another group within their own tribe. Whatever the explanation, on this gray day, with the light dwindling in the silent forest, the village had the eerie unease of a ghost town, the dwelling place of spirits rather than of men of flesh and bone.
I'm okay with it being empty. Move along. Let's go.
Yeah.
Count your blessings.
So they continue on, and then they hear the sound of some game. What do you think they heard, Brent? What's the game they're talking about?
Of some game.
His ears, an ornithologist's most fine-tuned collecting tool, caught the distinctive eok of the woolly monkey coming from the branches of a tree just overhead.
Yo, leave the monkeys be.
Woolly monkeys are highly intelligent, Brent, extremely sensitive animals. In captivity, they have been known to weep when upset. But when Cherry raised his rifle, took aim, and fired, he was not thinking about adding an interesting specimen to his museum collection. He was thinking about dinner. Mm-hmm. Moments later, a monkey with a dense gray fur, long prehensile tail, and a round protruding belly pitched forward and fell heavily out of the trees. As they watched the monkey tumble through the branches, the men briefly forgot their worries and concentrated on the prospect of fresh meat for dinner. Their excitement, however, nearly turned to catastrophe a few hours later, when, in their haste to make camp, they forgot one of the most fundamental rules of the rainforest: watch your step. With their dinner in hand, the men searched for a dry stretch of shore on which they could spend the night. Finally, finding a level spot a few feet above the river, they landed, moored their boats to some trees, and began clearing a site for their camp. As usual, they did not venture far from the water's edge, but what they did not realize that night was that the brush they were clearing concealed a coral snake.
Ooh, that sucks.
Of all the creatures of the rainforest, none are more reliably lethal to man than snakes. Naturalists complain that venomous snakes are hard to find in the jungle. They disappear in a mat of branches and leaves or hide beneath a fallen tree.
Oh, darn.
But they are there, and when they strike, they are deadly. The most infamous of South America's poisonous snakes are the ringed coral snake and the pit viper. A relative of North American rattlesnakes and copperheads, pit vipers have long horizontal fangs that snap into place like switchblades when they are ready to strike. Within seconds, their victims begin to sweat, vomit, and swell. Ah, what a horrible animal.
But for real, like, they talk about that's a good evolutionary trait.
Right.
Switchblade fangs. See, if that was on a list, I'd be like, check.
Like, they're such a deadly... Snakes are so evil, seeming. Like, right? Like, you've got a snake sneaking around. Just the predator of predators. Just an evil critter. Switchblade fangs going around, and some little thing comes by, and what's it do? It just, like... Fangs come out, attacks it, coils around it, and just bites it, injects vomit,
and then,
venom into it.
That poor son of a bitch is still alive, it's going to unhinge its nasty jaw and swallow it alive.
They're just like, there's something creepy about snakes,
They're cold,
man.
dude. Just cold.
So he does that. He says they begin to sweat, vomit, and swell. I mean, not only is it killing you, but it's the poison, too. It just makes it so creepy.
It couldn't just put you into paralysis.
Right.
Because that kind of venom exists, too.
Right.
It had to make it painful.
Death comes from renal failure or intracranial bleeding.
So your insides would liquefy.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
In 1931...
I'm 300 pounds, you turd. You ain't eating me.
In 1931...
Ugh.
Claudemiro Picado, a Costa Rican biologist and snake bite expert, described the horrors of a pit viper bite. Quote, moments after being bitten, the man feels a live fire germinating in the wound, as if red-hot tongs contorted his flesh. That which was mortified enlarges to monstrosity, and lividness invades him. The unfortunate victim watches his body becoming a corpse piece by piece. A chill of death invades all his being, and soon bloody threads fall from his gums and his eyes without intending to. His eyes will also cry blood until, beaten by suffering and anguish, he loses the sense of reality.
Now, at first, I thought he was like interviewing people and asking them, now, how do you feel? Obviously, a little bit of embellishment there, but...
No, it's like, you know, like when you're watching Indiana Jones and...
Ark of the Covenante.
Yeah, Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's the one. When you watch that and their faces all melt, you know, like everything just... This is a horrifying, like, they make horror movies like this. Literally, your blood just comes out of everything. Your gums just start leaking blood. Everything just collapses. I mean, you're a dead man. This is like the sort of thing you picture where they invent some kind of toxin for a biological weapon, and they launch it somewhere, and then everybody just, like...
See, these nasty snakes are why, like, invasive species happen. Because you'd rather have this invasive species running rampant, but as long as it eats those nasty snakes, take them.
I mean, it's horrible. Mother Nature is as scary as anything.
We don't have... Yeah.
The coral snake, which lurked under the brush as Roosevelt and his men waded ashore to make up camp that night, had venom as deadly as the pit viper. A member of the Elapidae family. I'm slaughtering these Latin names.
What? You're not like fluent in Latin?
The Elapidae family, which includes cobras and mambas. The coral snake is not as aggressive as a pit viper and has much shorter fangs, but its venom is just as potent and certainly as painful. Once injected, the venom immediately attacks the victim's nervous system, causing excruciating and irreversible paralysis. Eventually, the respiratory system collapses and the victim, acutely aware of what is happening to him, slowly suffocates to death. So you're completely conscious. Doesn't affect your brain at all. Your body just quits on you. Eventually, the respiratory system collapses and the victim, acutely aware of what's happening to him, slowly suffocates to death. You just suffocate. So lethal
what's
is the
timeline
bite.
On this?
So lethal is the bite of a coral snake that in rural Brazil at the time of Roosevelt's expedition, local people did not even attempt to treat it. No antivenom existed, and the moment someone was bitten, he was given up for dead. In North America, naturalists use an old adage, red touching yellow, dangerous fellow, to help distinguish between non-venomous snakes and the lethal coral snake. With its distinctive black, red, and yellow bands, this adage, however, is useless in the Amazon, where many of the more than 50 species of the coral snakes. You're shaking the table and the camera.
Sorry, I'm anxious.
I get the camera's going. People watching this are like getting dizzy. This adage, however, is useless in the Amazon, where many of the more than 50 species of the coral snake have red and yellow bands that do not touch but are deadly nevertheless.
I got an adage. F snakes. No way. not going anywhere near them.
While the camaradas noisily cleared a space in the overgrown shoreline for their campsite, they at first did not notice the 3-foot-long coral snake, which had darted out of its hiding place. As their calloused and dirt-streaked bare feet, moved upon the thin layer of leaf litter, the snake slithered by, growing increasingly agitated. When threatened, a coral snake thrashes its body and tail, often in prelude to an attack. Perhaps it was this whip-like movement that finally attracted the attention of one of the camaradas just as he was about to plant his foot squarely on the venomous snake. Terrified, the man grabbed an axe and swung wildly, driving the snake away from his feet and toward Roosevelt. Roosevelt reacted quickly, although perhaps not with his usual athletic grace. Despite his 220 pounds of Vordepois, Cherry later recalled. He was more educated
French.
than me. Fancy big word. Quote, Roosevelt, did a much livelier dance in attempting to set his foot on the snake than he did when he danced the hornpipe on shipboard. When Roosevelt's foot finally came thundering down, it missed its mark, crushing the snake's body rather than its lethal head. Rearing back, the snake attacked. Roosevelt, still wearing his heavy, hobnailed boots, watched as the snake's short fangs plunged into the tough leather and spilled its venom down the side of his boot. He had been spared an agonizing certain death by a quarter-inch of leather.
I'm going down to the Amazon. I'm wearing like chain link Kevlar. Just like, come at me.
Dude, that's nasty. So I don't know that like jumping on the snake is the... Like Roosevelt to me, there was a time, he should have died so many times that it's like there was a time God had planned for him or something.
Oh, for real.
Or a higher power. And
there for the grace of God go I.
And he just, because this wasn't the time, because it seemed like the time. Lots of times, right? So anyway.
Like, you mean getting shot point by 6 feet away with a
gun? There's like day 1, 2, 3 on the river. There's a picture painted of what the river is like. They're setting up camp, the snakes. There you have it. The next episode, we're gonna get deeper into we're gonna jump ahead pretty quick now that they're on the river. There's a few special moments that happen, and we'll probably read a little less from the book and just talk about what's going on, because now we're getting into some storytelling. Some betrayals and some
intrigue.
Yeah, some harrowing moments that they come across. And some totally badass struggles, like physical feats of mental toughness. And it's like to survive an expedition like this, as you get deeper into the book, you'll realize you just have to have a will to survive. A will that's stronger than the jungle, stronger than what's there. And I think that's what I admire about Theodore Roosevelt is the will. You know that he had all the asthma problems and all these other things, that he was a weak young man. Later, he's doing things that others just would fail at doing. What did he do? He just made his body stronger and his mind stronger. And he developed a mental will that made him a man among men. And on this journey, you'll also see that his son, Kermit, has the will as well. He's just tough. He's just tough. And he does some amazing things. The reason that Theodore comes out of the jungle alive is because of Kermit. Mm-hmm. You also see that Kermit unlike his father, struggles greatly with depression. And even though he's mentally tough in so many ways, he needed struggle and life and death experiences to keep him distracted from a melancholy that could sometime overtake him. Where Theodore didn't seem to struggle with that melancholy in the same way, although you could argue that Theodore was also manic, but he had a way of
I think
plunging himself into nature.
I would say I think he found a way to deal and harness it.
But I think he also just had a different attitude. He's like, well, get to work. If he was feeling melancholy, he was just like, well, get to work and that'll fix it. Start doing, get things done, make things happen, which is such a hard thing to do though when you don't feel like doing
that's
things.
That's a special person right there. They can make themselves do stuff when they don't feel like it.
Well, he also kind of almost couldn't help himself because he was just so bored with sitting still,
You imagine if he would have had Instagram or something, could sit down and scroll.
I don't know.
Scroll his life away.
So we're going to continue reading from the River of Doubt. We're also going to dive into 3 Felonies a Day, which is another good one. And we're also diving into 1984, the book by George Orwell. And those are some touchy subjects when we get into some of this stuff. And we've been talking about this for a while. We feel like, we started getting people involved. We live in a strange time right now, and we're seeing the writing on the wall with some of the censorship that's going on. And hunting is in the crosshairs. It always is. Anytime you're talking about killing another animal and consuming it's just a touchy subject, even though 99% of our country consumes meat. It's just something that's in the crosshairs in the world at large. You see decisions being made around conservation and hunting that have nothing to do with biology, ecology, or logic. Doesn't have anything to do with conservation. And
it's emotionally based thinking.
It is. And you see a lot of the censorship right now around...
take your pick.
Yeah.
We don't have to point anything specific.
But you could say around guns, because any gun content is in that crosshairs. Right now they're trying to infringe on the Second Amendment, and there's really a push on basically basic rights, but there's been a censorship push across the nation. It doesn't matter what side of the spectrum you're on, and it's just an obvious thing where, we were saying, look, we don't like the censorship that we're seeing on a number of social media platforms. And so we asked the audience, hey, you know what? Join us on like Parler, because, hey, they say they're not going to censor speech. And I want to support pro-American, pro-free speech platforms. I'm not getting into a political discussion on which side of the aisle you're on. I'm pro-free speech. That's where I stand. That's where I want to and I want to invest in platforms and technology and individuals who are also pro-free speech. With pro-free speech platforms, right, comes a lot of garbage. Because you can say whatever you want until people say, hey, that's a bad place to be because you can say whatever you want. So people say things they shouldn't say. And my response is that's freedom. That's the cost of freedom. People are going to say things you don't like. People that have a ideological view that hunting is evil and wrong and bad and should not be done are going to say we should censor hunting content. We should block hunting content because you know why? It's bad. Hunting is bad. So my stance is, well, free speech means I get to say that hunting is good and you get to say hunting is bad. That's called freedom of speech. From that person's perspective who's anti-hunting, their perspective is let's censor that because it's bad. If they get to decide and they control the levers of power, then they can decide what you think is bad and ban it. But that's the whole point of free speech. Speech that isn't controversial doesn't need to be protected. Everybody agrees with it. Right? Everybody agrees with speech that everyone agrees with isn't a problem. So when you talk about hunting, which is a controversial subject, when you talk about killing bears, hunting bears, which is what we do a lot of, you're talking about a subject that is very sensitive and that there's a lot of people who want to ban it in the name of it's wrong. And right now we're just seeing the writing on the wall with the way things are trending. We're looking at ways where we can build a community of people where we can't be canceled by mainstream because they decide that bear hunting or hunting is immoral, therefore you can't do it. So we've built a platform. We're working on building a platform where we're putting exclusive content for people who want to join us over there if you want to. And it's going to help us be more independent. We don't have to rely on sponsors as much. And what we've done is we've built a community where you go over there, you become a member, you get access to all of our films, you get access to exclusive podcasts. They are commercial free. Like right now, people think that we monetize our videos on YouTube and that every commercial we've clicked monetize for. Mm-hmm. And therefore, when you see a commercial every 2 minutes, it's because we've set it to be monetized. That's not true. YouTube just takes our videos and monetizes them on their own. They just override our stuff constantly. YouTube bullies us. We don't have, unless you have 100,000 followers on YouTube, we can't control the commercials. There's no one to call. Mm-hmm. And even then, I don't know if they would do anything. But we don't have enough subscribers to even be recognized as a citizen on YouTube. And so we don't have control over those commercials and what YouTube does. So we never know at any given time when YouTube will just say, sorry, hunting is not acceptable content. We're taking you down. And where would we put? Or iTunes says, "Sorry, your podcast content incites.
It's promoting a violent lifestyle. You can't tell me that's not going to be what you're going to hear."
And iTunes says your podcast is off the air now. We want to be independent of those platforms, and we want to be financially independent of having to participate on that mainstream stage. So for those who like our content and like what we do, we want you to join our community, and we would like your support. If you become a supporter over there, you have access to all of our exclusive content. And what we're going to try to do is keep all our content at the same level of output that we've been able to meet, but we're going to add like another third or like another 50% increase in content. Mm-hmm. But it's exclusive. And
where are we going to find all this time, you say?
Well, we're getting ready to bring on a full-time editor to join us. So
mic drop.
We're adding another employee. And for $7.99 a month, you get access to all of our footage, commercial free. You can just play it high res, high def. There's no commercials, which I'm excited about. Mm-hmm. You get access to bonus films. So there's a film that we just did from the mule deer hunt recently, Paley and Hillary and Ryan. And it's a great show. It's like 35 minutes long or something. And it's a great episode, but it's graphic because when you're taking apart an animal and you're talking about the shot, where it entered, where it exited, you're talking about organs, adrenals, liver, spleen.
People ask us all the time, how come there isn't a start to finish how to butcher an animal?
YouTube suppresses the content. If we show anything graphic, blood, guts, anything like that, YouTube blocks it. We don't get the traffic. They don't push it through the algorithm. And we depend on some level of reach or viewership because the more people that see it.
You think YouTube's going to share it if they can't monetize it? No.
They don't. And they don't push it through their algorithm. So you'll see like some videos reach 200,000 views and some make 40. A lot of times when you go into the 40, they're like, we can't make money on this because it's got too much graphic content. So it can't be shared with the masses. It can only be shared with a small group. Gun content, again, gets a little bit stifled because they're like, we can't show this to everybody because some people find it offensive. So that sucks. But if we can build a community, a lot like Cody Rich has done with his Patreon and his exclusive podcast content. If we can build a community over on our platform where people just subscribe, and for $7.99 a month, we're going to put entire series up over there that you're only going to see there. We're still going to deliver stuff to the mainstream, and we want to play on mainstream as long as possible because we want to reach not just people who are exclusive that are just hardcore hunters, but by having that community, there's so much content that we can share over there that we can't share on YouTube. Mm-hmm. There's like the raw and the real and some real cool stuff that I'll put over there that I'm not going to put on YouTube.
Yeah, because if you look at this next one, or Paley's hunt, I should say, you'll see a liver, you'll see a heart, you'll see adrenal glands, you're going to see a half-skinned buck laying there on the ground. Like, it's much more graphic than what we normally do.
Right.
And it's because we can do that on Locals.
And it's gritty.locals.com.
Yep.
And you go there and you can become a member, and it's like a private Facebook group. Mm-hmm. You become a member and you can see all the posts.
It reminds me a lot of Facebook like 7-8 years ago.
It's got a social media kind of interface. And the reason we decided to go with locals instead of Patreon and others is because they haven't just killed channels that they don't agree with. Patreon has just completely eliminated certain people because they're like, we are ideologically opposed to you. And hunting's not mainstream. It just isn't. Mm-hmm. It's on the chopping block just because it's not new wave popular in big city circles. And, you have a lot of like anti-hunting Hollywood and stuff. And so by putting our content over here, it's not hosted on YouTube anymore. It's not plugged into Vimeo. It's not plugged into some back end player. It's private. It's just over here on these servers that are unique. I can't get canceled over there like I can somewhere else. And if we can build a strong community over there, then Brendan and I don't even need to, we still would have some partners, but we don't really need to rely on any form of sponsorship, which we have great partners now, and we're happy to share their products and promote them. And mostly we do affiliate marketing. If you buy, we get paid. If you don't buy, we don't get paid. It's just a code. You save money and we get paid. It's kind of a win-win for everybody. That's why we like to do it. But over there with a community, we wouldn't have to worry about that as much. We really could rely on our customers or our fans directly instead of having to deal with, the back end. But we're going to put a lot of awesome content there, and content we're frankly not going to make public. There's going to be, right now it's a little bit new. And again, why I went with that platform is because they're pro free speech. It was born out of the tech, born out of free speech, people being censored and saying, we want to fix this. And the way it's been built up from the ground up, they're working on making it so Amazon, Jeff Bezos can't just come along and say, sorry, you can't play here.
Flip the switch.
But there's a cool app. It is on the App Store, and you can download that app from Google or Apple, and you can get it on your phone. And I love the interface, and you can be notified when we upload a new film series or podcast. And what we're planning to do is put up book type podcasts and reviews, and then gear reviews over there. So we're going to put a lot of content on there to reward people who become supporters. And we just want to reward those folks that are willing to join us over there. We'll still put out lots of cool content on all the other platforms, but we're really going to work on that. And one of the other cool features is there's live stream capability in about 5 or 6 months is where they think they'll have live stream. And then that community, we can just live stream with you directly. I don't like doing live stream on YouTube or Instagram or any of that because you just get trolls and a-holes jumping on there and just acting like. And when you get on, when you come to our community through our app, dude, it's sick. You're going to be able to, I've seen some of this stuff. You're going to be able to live stream. I'm going to be able to live stream with like lampers, and we can interact with the people that join. And if you join now, we're giving away some prizes every single month for people who have become members. We're giving away a Hoyt bow right now if you become a member. So head on over there. And the rest of our River of Doubt series podcast, we're going to put over there. Paley's new film is over there, the bonus film. We've got some bear hunts coming up. We're going to put a series out from upcoming bear hunts, and you'll still have access on the other end, but you'll have some special series content back there.
But about a third of the hunts going here forward to be on there only.
Well, and what's cool is last year, we had the permit problem, and we didn't have permits, so they didn't let us, and we couldn't get permits retroactively. We couldn't get them without 30 to 90 days notice.
So about 2/3 of the hunts for the year
just got canned, But going into this year, everything has permits. We've got that, and there's new laws around that. It might even be irrelevant, but we're not going to risk having our whole season just taken from us. These are adventures I record and I want to produce and are awesome to share. I don't want to give our government any excuse for taking that away from me. And so I'm just going to go through the permit process, but simultaneously perhaps go through some other channels to try to get these laws updated. And right now there's a lot moving and shaking on that space. And within a year, film permits for a guy and a single guy and a camera filming a hunt, it may be completely exempt, or it's a $200 annual fee for a federal film permit for all our hunts. Either way, that's so much different than the current system, which is just way, way out of date. So all I'm saying is it's not going to be hard for us to produce a lot of kick-ass content for people who become supporters. That's just to reward those folks. And then those who want to just get the rest of our content, you'll still get a few series a year of our hunts on the mainstream platforms. But if you want to get access to that other stuff, double our content, I'm hoping you become a member, become a supporter. And if you don't want to do the supporter, you just want to become a member, you can. So you can still view stuff. You just can't make posts to the group, but you can view everybody's posts. You can see when we make a post of a new video out or whatever. That'll be all public. So you can still participate. You don't need to pay. It's up to you. But we're going to try to reward those people. There'll be a little bit of that content, or a lot of that content that is for exclusive members only. Just check that out. So that's what's going on there. So check that out, River of Doubt series and what's coming up over at gritty.locals.com. Thanks for tuning in. Stay gritty.